All right, look, I don't know what kind of bee of some of these overeducated, self-proclaimed economists got in their bonnet on liberal networks, but I keep saying, let Trump cook. An interesting report today from the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta that also does quantitative economic research. They estimate that the GDP for Q2, the second quarter of this year, will breach 4.6%. That's interesting because didn't the CBO just say the opposite? Oh, yeah, right, they did. Here, January 7th, January 27th, 7 days after Trump took office, the quote, CBO finds that while the tariffs could increase revenues, they would also lead to harmful economic side effects, including a decline in U.S. gross domestic product. Seems like they were wrong. Weird. Could that be because they're actually just a bunch of partisan hacks that have no idea what they're doing?
I would add the Congressional Budget Office has been historically wrong. In fact, they predicted the Trump tax cuts from the president's first term in 2017. Their prediction was wrong by $500 billion. Those tax cuts had nearly $500 billion more of revenue than the Congressional Budget Office scored. And I would also point out, I don't think many people know this, there hasn't been a single staffer in the entire Congressional Budget Office that has contributed to a Republican since the year 2000. But guess what? There have been many staffers within the Congressional Budget Office who have contributed to Democrat candidates and politicians every single cycle since.
Whoops. I mean, this is huge, folks, because remember all the media piled on last quarter when GDP was negative 0.2?
Trump is clearly crashing the economy in real time.
Now, obviously, they all pounced on the opportunity and said, Trump's going to crash the economy. Clearly, not a single one of those people attended Econ 101 class or can do basic math for that matter. And I'm just telling you this so you can smash your liberal in-laws at the dinner table. But first, a month of that was Joe Biden's economy. But the rest of that was on the back of the federal government spending 5.1% less than they did in Biden's last quarter. That means less money was spent, but it also means money was saved, which is why inflation went down. That's why the cost of eggs went from $6.49 a dozen to $2.52 a dozen, but the media won't report on that. But also the fact that companies rushed to stockpile goods before tariffs went into place. So the money left the country for a very short period of time. And what was the result of just 1 quarter of a lost GDP? Oh, an estimate of GDP almost doubling the last 8 quarters under Biden. I mean, imagine that. And the new tariffs, by the way, for non-cooperative nations hit over $22 billion in revenue just for the month of May. It's almost like Trump knows what he's doing. I mean, this is so strange, right? And somehow, CNN is still baffled by this concept.
The party that is closest to your economic views, in November of 2023, it was the Republicans by 11 points. Now it's still within that range, still within that margin of error, plus 8-point advantage for the Republican Party. How is that possible, Democrats? How is that possible after all the recession fears, after the stock market's been doing all of this, after all the tariffs that Americans are against, and Republicans still hold an 8-point lead on the economy? Are you kidding me?
Weird, right? That the American people would trust a businessman over AOC and Bernie Sanders praising socialism. And the rest of the Democrat Party's economic plan is to just basically put everybody else on welfare. Is anybody outside of CNN shocked by that poll? No, I don't think so. And the left keeps coming back to tariffs. I don't know how much more simple I can make this. The tariffs are a mechanism to get people to the negotiating table. The EU, perfect example of that. These guys over in the EU just ignored his phone calls. They did not care. This is the typical arrogance of the entire continent of Europe. This is why I don't like them. All right, we don't have to deal with America. So Trump was like, fine, 50% tariff on you guys. And guess what? You won't sell a single BMW in our country ever again. Have a nice day. And just like that, there's the EU on the phone with Trump trying to make a deal. I don't understand what all these other countries don't get. You guys really want to go to war with us, trade or otherwise? Trump has made a career of chewing up bureaucrats like you. Remember the flag story with Trump? This is my favorite one. Trump wants to put a flag 150 feet in the air. Town says, no, you can only have a 100-foot flagpole. So Trump says, fine, builds a 50-foot mound, puts a 100-foot flagpole on top of it. Winning. Keep in mind, there's no shortage of ideas to conquer Europe in a trade war either. Trump reads Twitter instead of sleeping. We're in a country of innovation. That's what America is. Hell, tax evasion is like the most iconic American pastime, and that's evading our own government. What do you think we're going to do to European governments? We're going to chew you up and spit you out. But also, you really want to get into a trade war with the same people who out-innovate every other country just because we're bored most of the time? I mean, have you ever met most of America? Hey, you have people slapping, pick something, outboard motors on cars to drive through a lake for fun, skydiving from hot air balloons, breaking the speed of sound. We race 18-wheelers with snow plows on them between domesticating alligators because we had the afternoon off. You guys really want to try to outsmart the most innovative people in the world? Good luck, Europe. What do European people do? Make cheese? That's why I'm long on Trump, man. This is why I have faith, because Trump embraces that mindset. Something that the European mind, and frankly everyone else, can't comprehend because you're more worried about decorum than economic superiority. Look, the economy, even the global factor of it, it's not hard to understand. First off, this is something that is uniquely American. We don't settle. Americans strive for business success and superiority. Amazon, Exxon, Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, Google, largest market caps in the world of any company, all American. If you take the boot of regulation and government off the neck of the private sector, America will succeed. That is what Trump is banking on. Yes, these tariffs had some short-term effect, but Trump knows that Americans will figure this out and once again out-innovate as we always have throughout history. Trump's betting on us, and that's why I'm betting on him. And so is the stock market, quite frankly, as of today. That's why the Republican Party also is up 8 points on Democrats on the economy, because people like me, frankly, non-college educated, normal people who work a job and have been waiting for someone to bet on us for too long. In fact, the only reason this economy hasn't exploded even more right now is because Jerome Powell won't lower interest rates, which is why Trump is waging a war on our bond market right now. Again, trust the cook. Trump is trying to break the bond market by forcing money out of there and into the stock market and other investments. And the way he's doing that is he's securing these $7 or $8 trillion. Think about that. $7 to $8 trillion of investments Trump is bringing in from other countries and making it more profitable to have your money invested in economic generation rather than government-sponsored bond yields. But the other part of this requires the government to stop spending money, which I think Trump gets, but Congress doesn't, which is what Elon was talking about today when he tweeted this out, saying, quote, "I'm sorry, but I just can't stand anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it." I agree. And so does Rand Paul.
I'm just not going to take responsibility for the debt. The debt has always been a Democrat problem and a big government problem. Once this bill votes and this debt ceiling goes through, the debt is owned by the GOP, and there is no more campaigning and saying this is the Democrats. It will be owned by the Republicans, and I think that's a huge mistake.
Yeah. That's the last part of this. If we can stop spending money like drunken sailors, the value of the dollar is going to skyrocket, which is going to force interest rates down, which is going to make it cheaper for Americans to borrow money to do things like start businesses and buy houses. But you know the other reason he wants to lower interest rates so aggressively? And nobody's talking about this. Because we have about $8 trillion in debt that is needing to be refinanced in the next 6 to 8 months. And Trump would like a whole lot more to refinance it at 2, 3, or even 4% rather than 5 or 6%. Because those few percentage points are going to save us $1 trillion just in interest payments. It's not a hard concept. And apparently, most of America understands this. That's why Republicans are polling better on the economy, pal.
He loves the Constitution. He fights for what's right. He hates the bad guys. He's a freedom warrior. He's your freedom warrior. Watch Carl Higbie every weekday on Newsmax.